Have you ever thought about or are currently thinking about making a photo book for the first time? If so, I got you, because in this video, I'm gonna go over the 5-step method that I took in making my first photo book. Hey, my name is Matt and I'm a street photographer, and on this channel we talk about all things, anything related to street photography. Right after I got the idea to make a photo book, I had no idea where to start. So the first thing I did was just to scour other books and see what other people have done. I looked at photo books that I had and admired, and I looked at photo books everywhere, honestly, from famous photographers to contemporary photographers to other people who just made anything from books to zines or anything with pages in it, basically. And I was really just trying to get inspiration to see how photo books could look like at the end, like what a final product would look like, get ideas on how other people were doing layouts or have done layouts, how I felt about what was out there, like if someone put a lot of pictures on one page, or if they spread them out and had one picture for one page, or if they had one image cover full bleed across 2 pages. Just trying to see what other people did and how those types of images, whatever the content was in them, looked laid out differently. By looking at other people's books, I started asking myself more questions that helped shape what my book could potentially end up looking like. What I want my cover to be like. Do I want it to be soft cover, hard cover? Do I want designs on it? How do I want my pages to feel? What type of paper do I want to use? Because some of those books that I went through had really nice paper. Like one example right now is this Bruce Gilden Cherry Blossom book, and like, man, you just feel this paper and it feels really nice. What type of paper do I want? Do I want it to be matte, glossy, heavy, light? How are people laying things out? So how do I want my layouts to look like? Do I want purely just images, or do I want text with some images? What do different book sizes feel like in my hands? Do I want a book that is like this big, or ends up being something more of like a compact magazine format that I could hold? And for me personally, I really wanted to replicate the books that I really liked, but at the same time kind of keep my options open. So I for sure wanted 2 things: the ability to have my images be full page or full bleed with no white space, but also have the option to have white space. The second step in space is to poke around publishers. I looked at a lot of publishers to see what the potential end result could look like. Some of the publishers I looked at were definitely like Google Photos, because they're pretty cheap, and some random ones that I can't remember off the top of my head. But this step is really important because it lets you know what these companies can execute and how much they align with what you want to make. So for example, I was looking at this company called Tintint, and this video isn't sponsored by Tintint or anything. Maybe they should, but I was looking at one of their formats for a hardcover book, for example, and this is why this step is really important, to poke around publishers, because you get to find out how many pages they will actually print. I saw that they had different options from 40 pages all the way up to 80 pages. And based on the books that I had looked at from step one, and seeing how much I really liked books that really kept the focus per page to just one image, that let me know that, okay, if I choose a book with 40 pages and I'm going for something where I'm going for around 1 to maybe 2 images max on a page, that means I'm only gonna end up using at most 80 pictures. It's somewhere probably gonna be around 40 to 60. So that's a good thing to know moving forward. But besides just finding out the number of pages that these publishers could produce, I also got to check out different sizes that they could make, which, you know, goes back to those first questions from step 1. Poking around these publishers helped answer like, okay, who can make what size type of book, what type of paper, what type of layouts. And that really helped whittle down like who I was gonna pick, which company I was gonna go with. The other thing I did when I poked around publishers was play around with their editing tools, because at the end of the process, I had to upload my photos to these websites and then use their web apps to move pictures around and lay them out. I poked around to see how well their UI and like how well their experience was. Like, was it really easy and fast to upload photos? Was it easy to actually lay out pictures and and get a real sense of what I was gonna spend money on. Poke around publishers and preview their editing tools to get a really good idea of what it's gonna be like when you're actually executing and making the book. The third step was to ask questions. So after I figured out what my constraints were, I asked myself, what do I want this book to be about? And can I tell it in 40 to 60 images, which was what I had found earlier. And actually, I knew this book was gonna be for my girlfriend, but that still wasn't specific enough because, all right, like I want it to be about Alicia, right? So, but that idea is too vague with a book that's gonna end up being 40 to 80 images. Any book about her could be, I have so many images of her, right? This is gonna get out of control. So I still really had to focus and narrow down. So like, what about my girlfriend is this book gonna be about? Is this thing gonna focus on the moments between us two, or the ride that we've been on since we first met, or what have we been through in our first year? A story or set of images that kind of like tells what our relationship is like. I had to ask myself these questions to narrow down, and I felt like I was getting there, but still not quite there yet. What I did next is just to start looking at old photos. I started going through all my old photos, and ideas started popping up. Some that were different questions than what I had asked before, and some that answered some of those questions or vibed well with them. Some deeper things that like came out that really stuck with me were questions like, who is my girlfriend? Who is Alicia? Who is she to me? How do I see her? Or because I knew she was gonna be the one receiving this book, could I tell a story that showed how do I want her to see herself the way I see her? And as I was going through all these old photos, I started noticing things about her pop up, like different personality traits or quirks or things I really love about her. If I just thought about her normally, she's not like the loudest person. Like, you know, those types of people who are like really talkative and always loud, but those photos revealed a theme of like her being loud in her own way and comfortable in her own skin. It was really cool looking back at all these photos and seeing these different dimensions of her pop up to me. Yeah, by going back and forth between questions I came up with and questions and ideas that came from just looking at the images again after having not seen them for an entire year. The question of, you know, how do I want her to see herself the way I do from where I'm standing was a great question that really stuck with me. So asking questions, important step. Culling means going through your photos and making selects. So I just went through my past year's photos and picked out the ones that I liked, and also served to answer that question that from before. And pro tip real quick, keep your photos organized throughout the year. I promise you it will save you so much time when you're doing this, because you just have everything organized and it won't be a pain to have to organize them first before picking out selects and figuring out which photos are from what time. So I did my culling in Adobe Lightroom, which actually I felt like looking back ended up being kind of a mistake, which I'll talk about in another video. But I knew I had around max 100 photos. Because of that, I had to stay in a reasonable range, which helped me be more hard ass on which photos were gonna be kept and which were gonna be left out. So knowing that range really helped me not become too attached, because I knew like, okay, between two photos, which one is really gonna make the cut? Kind of in a way, now that I think about it, the previous steps help narrow down this, help you cull, actually help you select your photos, because you know the number of photos I have to work with, so I gotta hit that limit. So I gotta be a little bit more ruthless because of that. Okay, now I have this idea or this story or this question that I'm trying to answer. So any photos that don't fit that or help that cause, all right, those are getting thrown out too. It's easier to edit your work this way once you've done those two steps. But at the same time, this step was still really challenging. At the end of it, you're gonna come down to this situation where you're picking between the last of the bunch, and it almost feels like tossing a baby away. But anyway, if you're interested in going deeper with me on how I really went in and ruthlessly selected those photos at the end, then check out this video, which should be coming out soon. Now it's time to execute, and it's gonna be much easier because in the previous step 2, poking around, I'm already familiar with the publisher's editing tools that I'm gonna use since I picked them. So I just went back to the editor and went ham and put the thing together. To tell you the truth, I actually wasn't happy with my first pass, so I went back to step 3 and 4 and had to refine my idea a little bit and also edit my edits, taking out some photos and bringing in some new ones. So just know that this might happen to you and that it's perfectly okay and perfectly natural. It's part of the creative process to move back and forth between steps, and you know, sometimes you take 1 step forward, 2 steps back. Sometimes you take 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but it's a fluid process, and just have fun with it. Finally, I had something I was super happy with and hit publish and hit purchase and swipe that credit card. Next thing you know, this thing came in the mail and it was fucking sweet. Feeling a book filled with your work of digital images that you've taken for the past year and actually seeing them not on camera, not on a computer screen, but actually on paper, and being able to touch them and see them next to each other and just really hold it in your hand. And for me, giving it to somebody that I love, it was a pretty damn good feeling. It honestly feels like being back in kindergarten, making those scrapbooks and arts and crafts, cutting out pictures and drawing things and writing things and making those, you know what I'm talking about, those chunky, really lovable scrapbooks that you make for your mom, but now you're a full-grown adult, and guess what? This thing is just a lot more high quality. Not that those weren't bad at all, like those things are great. We're all artists, even as kids. But now going from like a scrapbook to making this New York Times bestseller, fine art book, legit Vogue magazine production type of work. Yeah, if you found this video helpful, then I recommend checking out this video where I go deeper into the specific tips and hacks that I learned making this book, or this video where I share the mistakes I made making this photo book, which hopefully you can avoid. So go watch those and save yourself hours of pain.